He hadn't cried in years. Not when his wife died. Not even when doctors told him his triplets would never walk, talk, or recognize his face again. But that night, when Andrew watched the nanny on his hidden cameras, something inside him broke. He saw her kneel beside his motionless sons and whisper words no therapist ever dared to say. "Hey, warriors, I believe in you." She sang to them. Not lullabies, but hope. And when one tiny finger moved, barely, Andrew thought it was a glitch. Until the next day, it happened again. He didn't know whether to fire her or thank her. But one thing was certain. The woman he hired was about to rewrite his family's destiny. And that's where her story truly began. Before we dive deeper, please, if you're listening to this right now, I want to prove my mom wrong. She said I can't even reach 3,000 subscribers. Help me show her that stories like this matter. Subscribe to King's Folklore, and let's keep breathing life into tales that refuse to die. Now, let's continue. The mansion was always quiet. Too quiet. Even the walls seemed to echo sadness, the kind that money couldn't hide. Andrew Carter, once one of the richest men in California, now spent his days locked behind glass walls and silence. Since the accident, his triplets, Adam, Eric, and Philip, had been confined to wheelchairs, paralyzed and speechless. Their laughter had disappeared the day their mother died in that crash. And so did Andrew's faith in anything he couldn't see or control. He'd hired 5 caregivers in 2 years. All of them left. Some quit. Some were fired. He didn't trust anyone anymore. Not after finding one of them taking selfies beside his sleeping sons like they were trophies. So when Angela showed up, soft-spoken, brown-skinned, and wearing a calm smile, he didn't see hope. He saw another potential disappointment. Rules are simple. He told her that first day, his tone flat. No unapproved exercises. No emotional promises. Stick to the schedule. They don't understand. Angela had only nodded. Understood, sir. But her eyes lingered on the boys longer than expected, gentle but determined. That night, Andrew installed cameras in every room she used. He told himself it was for safety. Deep down, it was because he didn't trust anyone with what little he had left. For the first week, Angela followed instructions precisely. Feed them. Stretch their limbs. Play soft music. Everything seemed normal. Until day 8. At exactly 10:47 p.m., when the lights were supposed to be out, Andrew saw something on the monitors. Angela was still in the nursery. The lamps were dim, her voice barely audible. But she wasn't reading the medical chart or adjusting wheelchairs. She was singing. Not nursery rhymes, songs of hope. Soft, soulful words like prayers. And as she sang, she moved their fingers gently, one by one, whispering, "You are stronger than they think. You can do this." Andrew leaned closer to the screen. His jaw tightened. "What is she doing?" he muttered. This wasn't part of the plan. He almost called security, then stopped. Because something happened. A faint twitch. Just a flicker. Philip's right index finger moved. Andrew froze. Rewound the footage. Watched again. The same small movement. He blinked. No way. Doctor said they'd never have voluntary movement again. Maybe it was just muscle spasm, he told himself. Nothing more. But his heart disagreed. The next night, he stayed up again, watching her. Same time, same song. She knelt beside the boys, eyes closed, humming like she believed her words could rebuild broken bones. And when she finished, she smiled and said softly, "Good night, my brave little men. Tomorrow, we'll try again." Andrew exhaled, realizing he'd been holding his breath. "What kind of woman does this?" he murmured. Days turned into weeks. Angela's secret routine continued. She began using colored scarves, rolling balls under their palms, tapping rhythm patterns on their knees. And somehow, unbelievably, the boys started reacting. Tiny things at first. A blink in rhythm. A faint smile. Even an attempt to hum when she sang. Andrew was torn between disbelief and something dangerous. Hope. He found himself watching her more than his business reports. He'd tell his assistant, "Cancel my meetings just to stay home," pretending he was working while secretly monitoring her through the screens. Then one afternoon, while checking the footage, he noticed something that stopped him cold. Angela was crying. Not loud tears, quiet ones, the kind people hide when no one's watching. She whispered, "You boys remind me of my brother. He couldn't walk either. But one day he did. God did that. And he can do it again." Andrew turned off the screen. For the first time in years, he felt guilt. Guilt for spying on her. Guilt for losing faith. Guilt for treating his sons like broken projects instead of miracles waiting to unfold. That night, when Angela finished her shift, Andrew met her at the door. "You stay late," he said, his tone guarded. Angela wiped her eyes quickly. "Yes, sir. Just finishing up." "Why?" She hesitated. "Because they deserve more than a schedule." Her words stayed with him long after she left. He couldn't sleep, so he returned to the cameras, only to find her again, back in the nursery, holding Adam's limp hand. But this time, she wasn't singing. She was praying. And as she whispered, Adam's fingers moved. Not once. Not by accident. Deliberately. Like he was trying to hold her hand. Andrew dropped his phone. He stared at the screen, tears forming before he could stop them. He hadn't cried in years, but that night he did. "What would you do?" he whispered to himself, "if the thing you stopped believing in started believing in you?" By the next morning, the house didn't feel the same. Maybe it was the sunlight, or maybe it was the tiny spark that had found its way back into Andrew's chest. He sat at the breakfast table, pretending to read the news, while his eyes followed Angela through the reflection in the glass wall. She was humming again, soft, peaceful, almost sacred. The triplets sat before her, their heads gently supported by cushions. Andrew's assistant entered the room quietly. "Sir, there's a call from the investment board." He waved it off. "Tell them I'll call back." He hadn't ignored work in years, but something about this moment felt more important. Angela began her morning routine, but this time, Andrew noticed new details. The way she positioned their legs with slow precision, how she whispered encouragement into their ears. She wasn't just caring for their bodies. She was reaching for their souls. "Come on, my warriors," she said softly. "Show me what you've got today." And then it happened. Philip's left arm twitched. A subtle, shaky movement, but this time unmistakable. Angela gasped, her hands trembling. "Did you just—" "Oh, thank you, God." Andrew nearly dropped his coffee cup. He replayed in his mind, frame by frame. It was real. He rushed into the nursery, startling her. "Do that again," he said sharply. Angela turned, eyes wide. "Sir, whatever you were just doing, do it again." Her lips pressed together nervously, but she obeyed. She sang again, the same melody he'd heard through the cameras. Soft, rising and falling like a prayer. Philip's fingers twitched once more, stronger this time. Andrew's voice cracked. "How long has this been happening?" Angela hesitated. "I've seen little signs for a few days now. I didn't want to get your hopes up." He sat down slowly, his face pale. "My hopes died a long time ago." Angela looked him in the eyes. "Then maybe it's time you bury your doubts instead." Those words hit deeper than she knew. Over the next few weeks, things changed. The house that once echoed silence began to fill with faint laughter, first from Angela, then from Andrew. He stopped watching her on camera. He started watching her in person. He'd walk into the nursery and actually help. He learned how to stretch their limbs properly, how to encourage small movements, how to celebrate every little win. Angela guided him gently, smiling when he got it wrong. And for the first time in years, he didn't feel like a billionaire or a widower. He felt like a father again. Then, one afternoon, during a therapy session, something extraordinary happened. The physical therapist, a rigid man named Dr. Collins, frowned as he examined Adam's legs. "There's increased tone here," he muttered, confused. Angela stepped back, holding her breath. "What do you mean?" Andrew asked. "I mean, their muscles are firing. That shouldn't be possible." Angela's eyes filled with tears. Andrew looked at her, and for the first time, smiled. The therapist called for follow-up scans. Days later, the results confirmed it. Neural activity was returning in areas previously labeled irreversibly damaged. It made no medical sense, but it was happening. The story spread quietly through the hospital network. Reporters wanted interviews, but Andrew refused. "This isn't a headline," he said. "It's a healing." Late that night, he found Angela in the living room, folding the boys' blankets. "You did this," he said softly. Angela shook her head. "No, sir. They did. I just gave them what they'd been missing." "What's that?" "Belief." Andrew's throat tightened. He'd spent years believing in data, in diagnostics, in logic. And yet, one woman's faith had done what millions of dollars in therapy couldn't. But not everyone shared his wonder. When Dr. Collins learned Angela had been using unverified techniques, he filed a complaint. Said she was endangering the children. Andrew's temper flared. He called an emergency meeting where the doctor demanded Angela's dismissal. "She's not qualified to perform experimental therapy," the man barked. "You're risking regression." Angela stood there silently, tears glistening in her eyes. Andrew looked at her, then at his sons, watching from their chairs. And in that instant, he remembered something. The twitch, the smile, the first hand that moved toward hers. He turned to the doctor. "Doctor," he said firmly, "if faith is an experiment, then she's the only one who ever got results." He fired the man that night. When Angela tried to thank him, he stopped her. "No, thank you. You've given me back my children and my heart." For the first time since the tragedy, Andrew prayed. Not for money, not for success, but for strength to believe again. And when he looked at his sons, he saw it. The faintest sign of something doctors said was gone forever. A spark of life. What would you do if the miracle you've been praying for showed up when you stopped expecting it? 3 months passed. The triplets' progress was undeniable. Philip could now grip a spoon for a few seconds. Eric could hold his head upright. And Adam, the quietest of them all, had begun forming sounds that resembled words. To anyone else, they were small victories. But to Andrew, they were proof that miracles didn't always come as thunder. Sometimes they whispered. The house once filled with sorrow now pulsed with quiet joy. Music played in the mornings, laughter echoed through the halls, and even the garden bloomed brighter. Angela had become part of the family, not by title but by love. She wasn't just a caregiver anymore. She was the bridge between despair and hope. Yet, not everyone celebrated her. One afternoon, as Angela returned from buying therapy supplies, she found a man standing by the gate, Andrew's lawyer. He handed her an envelope. Inside was a contract termination notice. Angela's hands trembled. "I don't understand." The lawyer sighed. "The company board believes the boy's condition is a liability risk. They advise Mr. Carter to replace you with certified neurotherapists." Her heart sank. After everything, after all the progress, she was being dismissed? She walked inside, trying to hold back tears. Andrew stood by the living room window, his face pale and distant. "You signed it," she said, her voice breaking. He didn't respond immediately. "It's for their safety," he finally said, his tone hollow. The board, she snapped. "Or your fear?" He turned, his eyes full of conflict. "You don't understand. If something goes wrong, they'll sue me. I can't risk losing them again." Angela's voice softened. "You're not losing them, Andrew. You're losing faith." The room fell silent. Tears welled in his eyes. Tears of a man torn between love and control. She placed her hand on his arm. "Do you know why they got better? It wasn't the money, the machines, or the protocols. It was because someone finally believed they could." She hesitated, voice shaking. "Don't take that away from them now." And with that, she walked out, quietly, without another word. The mansion felt cold again that night. Empty. Andrew sat in front of the monitors, watching old footage of Angela laughing with the boys. He saw joy, warmth, faith. Then came the sound that stopped his heart. Through the live feed, he heard a noise from the nursery. He rushed upstairs and froze. The triplets' room was filled with movement. Adam's leg kicked forward. Eric's arm reached toward the door. Philip's lips moved. And then a sound. A word. Barely audible, but real. "Mama!" Andrew dropped to his knees. He wasn't imagining it. They were calling for her. He ran outside, found Angela halfway down the driveway. "Angela, wait." She turned, shocked to see tears streaming down his face. "They spoke," he said, breathless. "They spoke. They were calling you." Angela gasped, covering her mouth as tears spilled freely. "They're talking." "Yes," he said, laughing and crying all at once. "You were right. You were always right." He stepped closer. "I was so afraid of losing them. I forgot what it meant to believe in them." His voice broke. "I'm sorry." Angela smiled through her tears. Then stop being sorry. Start being grateful. They walked back inside together, where the boys were waiting, eyes shining, tiny smiles forming. Angela knelt down, touching their hands gently. And as Andrew watched, one by one, his sons did something that silenced the whole room. They stood, shaky, trembling but standing. Angela covered her mouth, sobbing. Andrew's legs gave out beneath him. He crawled forward, hands trembling, unable to believe what he was seeing. The boys, his boys, taking their first steps toward the woman who'd refused to give up on them. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't smooth, but it was miraculous. Andrew looked up at the ceiling, tears falling. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for sending her." In that moment, something shifted deep inside him, not just as a father, but as a man. He turned to Angela, voice soft. "I thought you came here to care for my children," he said. "But maybe you were sent to heal me too." She smiled faintly. Sometimes God fixes a heart before he fixes a body. The camera in the corner caught everything, not as surveillance, but as testimony. The billionaire who once doubted miracles now stood in the middle of one. That night, Andrew removed every hidden camera in the house. No more watching from behind screens. From now on, he would live every moment with faith, not fear. And for the first time since tragedy struck, the Carters sat around the dinner table, all together, all smiling. What would you do if the thing you feared most turned out to be the very thing that saved you? In the end, Andrew learned that miracles don't always arrive with noise or lightning. Sometimes they come softly through the faith of someone who refuses to give up. His sons walked, laughed, and lived, not because of medicine alone, but because love dared to believe what logic could not. He stopped hiding behind fear and started living with faith. And Angela, she didn't just heal a family, she rebuilt one. If this story touched you, hit that subscribe button for more emotional tales from King's Folklore. And even if it didn't, come on, subscribe anyway. We'll win you over next time. Drop a comment, like the video, and let's keep these stories alive. Thanks for watching.